The Brothers Bond, a tale of envy and redemption. John and James were brothers who grew up in the small town of Riverton. They shared everything: toys, secrets, and dreams of a brighter future. But as they grew older, their paths diverged in ways that neither of them could have foreseen. James, the eldest, was always the golden boy. Handsome, intelligent, and charming, he seemed to glide through life with ease. After graduating from a prestigious university, he quickly climbed the corporate ladder, becoming a successful entrepreneur. By the time he was 30, he was wealthy beyond imagination, living in a luxurious mansion and driving the latest sports cars. John, on the other hand, struggled to find his place. He dropped out of college after 2 years and bounced from one dead-end job to another. As James's wealth and success grew, so did John's resentment. Every family gathering was a painful reminder of his own failures. He couldn't escape the shadow of his brother's achievements, and envy began to consume him. One evening, as John sat in his cramped apartment, nursing a bottle of cheap whiskey, he scrolled through social media, looking at photos of James's extravagant lifestyle. The bitterness in his heart turned to anger. Why does he get to have everything? John muttered to himself, "Why do I have to be the one struggling?" The idea came to him like a whisper in the dark. If James was out of the picture, perhaps he could inherit some of his brother's wealth. The thought horrified him at first, but the more he dwelled on it, the more it made sense. Desperation had clouded his judgment, and he convinced himself that this was the only way to escape his misery. John spent weeks planning. He researched methods, covered his tracks meticulously, and ensured that his alibi would be airtight. The day arrived, and John found himself outside James's mansion, a heavy sense of dread hanging over him. He broke in through a side window, making his way to the living room where he knew James would be relaxing after a long day. As he stood in the shadows, watching his brother sip a glass of wine, memories flooded his mind. Memories of happier times when they were just two boys playing in their backyard. His resolve wavered, but the bitterness surged back, stronger than ever. He approached James silently, his hands trembling. But before he could act, James turned around, his face lighting up with surprise and joy. "John, what are you doing here?" he exclaimed, setting his glass down and walking towards him. The warmth in James's voice was like a dagger to John's heart. For a moment, he couldn't speak. Then, driven by a mix of rage and despair, he lunged at James, a knife glinting in his hand. The struggle was brief but intense, and in the chaos, John slipped, the knife turning against him. Pain shot through his side, and he collapsed to the floor, blood pooling around him. James, horrified, rushed to his brother's side. "John, what have you done?" he cried, his hands shaking as he tried to staunch the bleeding. The sound of sirens filled the air, neighbors having heard the commotion and called the police. In the hospital, as John lay recovering, James visited him every day. The initial shock and anger gave way to a deep sadness. He couldn't understand why his brother had been driven to such desperation. John, weak and filled with regret, confessed everything. He spoke of his envy, his failures, and how he had let darkness take over his heart. James listened, tears streaming down his face. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked softly. "We could have found a way together." John had no answer. The weight of his actions bore down on him, and he knew he had nearly destroyed the one person who had always loved him unconditionally. The ordeal brought a profound change in both brothers. James, realizing how his success had inadvertently overshadowed his brother, made a conscious effort to include John in his life. He offered him a job in his company, not out of pity, but as a way to rebuild their bond. John, humbled and grateful for a second chance, accepted. He underwent therapy to address his deep-seated issues and worked hard to turn his life around. The path to redemption was long and difficult, but with James's support, he slowly began to heal. The story of John and James spread through Riverton, a cautionary tale of envy and the redemptive power of love and forgiveness. It served as a reminder that no matter how deep the rift, the bond between brothers could withstand even the darkest of storms. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please engage and follow for more.